Hey guys, welcome back to JavaScript for Beginners Part 3. Here we left off with declare a read-only variable with the const keyword. The keyword let is not the only new way to declare variables. In ES6 you can also declare variables using the const keyword. Const has all the awesome features that let has, with the added bonus that variables declared using const are read-only. They are a constant value, which means that once a variable is assigned with const, it cannot be reassigned. So if you use const favepet equals cats and then try to put favepet reassign favepet to dogs, the console will display an error due to reassigning the value of favepet. You should always name variables you don't want to reassign using the const keyword. This helps when you accidentally attempt to reassign a variable that is meant to stay constant. Note, it is common for developers to use uppercase variable identifiers for immutable values and lowercase or camel case for mutable values, such as objects and arrays. You will learn more about objects, arrays, and immutable and mutable values in later challenges. Also, in later challenges, you will see examples of uppercase, lowercase, or camel case variable identifiers. Change the code so that all variables are declared using let or const. Use let when you want the variable to change and const when you want the variable to remain constant. Also rename variables declared with const to conform to common practices. Do not change the strings assigned to the variables. So here we want to say free code camp. Change this line FCC free code camp. This is not going to be changed throughout all of this, so we would use const here. And since this is a constant, we want this to be all capitalized. Here we want to say fact equals is cool. And then here we want to change fact to is awesome. So we would use let or const. We'd use let here. Console.log, FCC, and fact. Let's try this, run the tests, and raise the roof. We did it. Good job. Submit and go to the next challenge. Add two numbers with JavaScript. Number is a data type in JavaScript which represents numeric data. Now let's try to add two numbers using JavaScript. JavaScript uses the plus symbol as an addition operator when placed between two numbers. For example, const myVar equals 5 plus 10. MyVar now has the value of 15. Change 0 so that the sum will equal 20. Change the 0 so the sum will equal 20. So go ahead and pause it here. Try to do it yourself and come back when you're ready. So here we'd want the sum to equal 20, so we do that, and that would equal 20. And here I just wanted to show you what they mean here by number is a data type in JavaScript. So if we have, let's say, let a equal, let's say, 10, like that, and we say type of. When we type type of, it'll give us the type of any variable. So here I could say type of a, and it will tell me that the type is a string. If I say let b equal an object here, then we'd say type of b, it'd say object. This right here in JavaScript is an object. We'll get into that later. If I said let c equal an array, even though this is an array, it's actually an object under the hood. Everything in JavaScript is an object. So if you remember that, it will help you out in certain cases. So if I say type of c, it'll actually say object. But here I'll have to say array dot is array, which is a method on the actual array constructor, and I can say C, and that would tell me true because C is an actual array. They're both objects, but B is only an object and C is an array, which is an object under the hood, but it's an array. If I say array is array on B, it will give me false. So that's just another aside there, another quick side note here. Essentially, just want to show you that the type of A here, because there are strings, this is a string, there are quotes around it, the type of it is a string, it's not just 10. So sometimes strings will act as numbers, but sometimes they'll act as letters. And so you will see the nuances of that as we progress and as you sort of experiment on your own. So if I say, what are we on now? Let D equal 10 here. Now A is 10 as a string, and D is the number 10. So if we say type of D, it'll say number. And this is what is meant by number is a data type in JavaScript, which represents numeric data. The differences are this. If I say a plus this is actually a reserved keyword in JavaScript, so we could use that, but a better example would be literally anything else. So plus string, you'd get 10 string, literally another string that's all of this together, and this is a of type string. But if we say d plus string, what would we get here? We get this whole function here, which would be 10. This is actually trying to return. Oh, I'm sorry. This gave the actual string constructor. So we want d plus string. It doesn't want to do it. I'm sorry. D plus the string. And here we get 10 string also. So you can see, even though d is a number, when we add a string to it, it will give us the string version of it, and it will attach it to that. So now this whole thing is a string. If we do the opposite, and let's say a is a string, but it's still 10. If we say a plus 30, yeah, here we would get a, which is 10, as a string, plus 30. It would just concatenate 30. Even though this is a number, it turns it into a string, and we get left with a string that says 1030. But if we say d plus 30, since the number, the type is of type number, it would actually give us 40, which may be what we want in most cases here if we're adding 30. So that's just something to note. If it seems complex right now, as with more time, you'll start to understand these things. So let's run this and see what happens. Off the charts. Good job. Let's go into the next one. Subtract one number from another with JavaScript. We can also subtract one number from another. JavaScript uses the minus symbol for subtraction. For example, const my var equals 12 minus 6. My var would have the value of 6. Change the 0 so the difference is 12. So that'd be what? Let's see. 45, 35. We don't want to take 45 minus what equals 12. 45 minus 12 would be 33. So 45 minus 33, right? Run the tests. Way cool. Submit. Go to the next challenge. Multiply two numbers with JavaScript. We can also multiply one number by another. JavaScript uses the star symbol for multiplication of two numbers. For example, const my var equals 13 times 13. My var would have the value of 169. Change the 0 so that the product will equal 80. So here we go. Const product equals 8 times what? 8 times what equals 80? Of course, it is 10. Run the tests. Feel that need for speed. Divide one number by another with JavaScript. I think you guys are seeing the pattern here. We can also divide one number by another. JavaScript uses the division symbol. Actually, it's / symbol for division. A funny way to remember / and backslash, which is something that maybe I was unique to this, but I could not remember which way was forward and which way was back, because it's like, is this a /? Because if you start from it's actually starting here and it's going forward, and that is the actual true case. But in terms of a backslash, you'd get this guy here, and you could also see that as it's moving forward, right? It's going down, but it's moving forward. Well, they have some real funny memes where you can actually put a head and some arms and legs on the backslashes and /, and you'd see this guy's actually leaning back, right? If you imagine a head on the top of a slash, and you can see whether he's leaning back or whether he's leaning forward, and that's a good way to always remember if it's a / or a backslash. Just pretend that this is somebody's body, and it's either leaning forward or back. So JavaScript uses the / symbol for division. Example, const my var equals 16 divided by 2. My var is now 8. Change the 0 so that the quotient is equal to 2. So 66 divided by 33 would equal 2 to the 9s. Increment a number with JavaScript. You can easily increment or add 1 to a variable with the ++ operator. I++ is the equivalent of I equals I plus 1. Note the entire line becomes I++, eliminating the need for the equal sign altogether. This is very nice and definitely something that you'll use as a developer essentially daily. Change the code to use the ++ operator on my var. So here, instead of saying, if we initiate my var to 87 and we want to make it 88, all we would do is, instead of saying my var equals my var plus 1, go ahead and pause this and try to figure out the solution on your own and come back when you're ready. What we would do is say my var equals my var plus plus. We can also say my var equals plus plus my var, but the difference here is going to come in when you're actually iterating over something. So I don't want to get too deep into for loops, but let me just give you a quick preview. So a for loop is something where I can say for let I, and I is always what we use for loops. It's just a construct. You can use any letter here for a variable, but for let I equal, let's say 0, then you put a semicolon and you say while. This is the while statement. So you want this to run while this thing is true. So I'll say while I is less than or equal to 10. Let's just say less than 10. Then here, that will give us 10 iterations. And then here you say after every iteration, what should I do with I? If you just say I equals I here, and you want that to run after every iteration, I will never change. And it's going to start off as 0, and it will never increment. It's just going to stay 0. And you're going to have what's called an infinite loop, where it's going to run forever and ever and ever. Your computer's going to heat up, and eventually the browser window will crash. So you don't want that. And you have to make sure in a for loop, everyone does it, so you'll create an infinite loop or two before you get the hang of it. But you want to say here, you want I to increment. So you can say I plus plus, or you can say I equals I plus 1 here. So you want it to let the for loop know what to do at the end of each loop, at the end of each iteration. Now it's going to actually run whatever code in here every single time that it runs. So here you can say, what do you want it to do every single time? The first time I is going to equal 0, you can say, let's say console.log. This is how we log anything out to the console here. And in a string, I want the string I, and then I also want the actual value of I. So console log I, and then console log the value of I. And if we do this and run it, we're going to get these consoles here. So we're going to say the first time I was 0, second time I was 1, and then what did it do? It incremented by 1. So it said I is 1 here, increment by 1, and now go back, I will equal 2. So and then if I equals 2, then is I less than 10? Yes. Since it's less than 10, it's going to run the code that's inside of the for loop. So I is 2, I is 3, all the way up to 9, and then it ends. So let's say here that we said I equals, let's say we have a variable outside of here, and we say, for example, A. Let A equals 0. Then A will equal 0, right? But we can say console.log for each one, console.log A, and here we're going to say console.log A plus plus. What is this going to do? The first iteration, it will say 0, right? Now essentially it'll say I equals 0 on the first one, and A will also equal 0 on the first one, and it will give us A is 0. So it will essentially say I and A will be the same values all the way through. So let's see that. So I is 0, A is 0. I is 1, A is 1. I is 2, A is 2. Now let me show you the difference here. So let's reassign A back to 0. And instead of saying A plus plus, let's say plus plus A, and let's see how it changes. So now we did the same thing, but we put the pluses before the A. Well, look what changed now. I is 0, but A is 1. I is 1, A is 2. I is 2, A is 3. Why is A 1 more now? Well, this is why. Because if you put the pluses before the A, then you're saying increment A, and then give me that value here. So A will be incremented from 0 to 1, and then that's what will print on this iteration, on this time around. And then the next time we come around to it, A is now 1, but it's going to increment it to 2 before it displays it for me. And so if we put this incrementer here before, then it's going to increment, and it's going to increment it before it prints, because the increment is happening before the print is happening. But if we take this off and we put it here, then we're saying give us the value of A as it currently is, and then increment it. So the next time you come around on the second time in the for loop, the value will have incremented, but it happens after it prints. So that's sort of a neat thing to understand. Go ahead and rewind that if you want to, or let me know if you have any questions below, and I'm happy to help anytime. So what would we do here? We change this to this incrementer there, run the tests, and it should equal, oh, my var should equal 88. Yeah, so my var would not equal 88 in this case. because of why. It won't equal 88 because we're saying we want it to happen after this fact. So if we just take this and put the plus plus there, it equals 88. And what I had just explained is the exact reason why we had to put that there. There's no spoon. All right. I feel the same way too sometimes. Free code camp. Decrement a number with JavaScript. You can easily decrement or decrease a variable by 1 with the minus minus operator. So same thing here, just minus minus. So here we want to change the code to become 10, I assume. So we can't do this, right? Because even though we do that, it would change, but it wouldn't change on at the time of my var being declared or being reassigned to a different value, right? If we say in here, let my var equal 11, and then we say my var equals my var minus minus, my var will still be 11 because we're doing it after. But if we say, if there's some, let's say there's also a which equals 11, right? And we say my var equals a minus minus. Well, we're also decrementing it. We're essentially saying give me my var to equal a, which at this moment in time is 11, but also take 1 away from a. So it will turn a into 10, but my var will still be 11. So if we do that, we'll see my var is 11, but what is a? A is now 10. You see that? So that's something to always understand. Now, if it's the same variable as it was up here, we saw that it didn't have an effect because all we did was set it to be 11. So essentially, it can't be 10 because you set it to 11 before you decremented it. But that's something to be aware of also. So let's run the tests. Oh, it's on the wrong side. Here's looking at you, code. And let's go through one more. Create decimal numbers with JavaScript. We can store decimal numbers in variables too. Decimal numbers are sometimes referred to as floating point numbers or floats. Note, when you compute numbers, they are computed with finite precision. Operations using floating points may lead to different results than the desired outcome. If you are getting one of these results, open a topic on the Free Code Camp forum. Create a variable myDecimal and give it a decimal value with a fractional part, for example 5.7. Only change code below this line. So myDecimal, let's say const myDecimal equals anything we want. That's going to be a fraction. Let's run that. We're heating up. All right, we'll do one more then. Multiply 2 decimals of JavaScript. In JavaScript, you can also perform calculations with decimal numbers, just like whole numbers. Let's multiply 2 decimals together to get their product. Change the 0.0 so that the product will equal 5.0. 2 times what equals 5.0? All right, there it is. Nothing but net. All right, I lied. Let's do one more. Divide 1 decimal by another with JavaScript. Now let's divide 1 decimal by another. Change the 0 so that the quotient will equal 2.2. What do you think it is? Go ahead and pause it if you'd like to. Come back when you're ready. And of course, it's 4.4. There's the roof. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks a lot. Go ahead and like, subscribe, comment with any questions, and feel free to reach out to me. You can always reach me best at wisnerjjason@gmail.com. That's WIESNERJJASON @gmail.com. Please feel free to reach out at any time. All right, thanks a lot for watching, guys.